Hello folks and welcome to today's episode of Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by the head of sport of the Nina Guardian, Shane Brophy. Shane, how are things?
Good now, yeah.
Yeah, we've a fair bit to talk about. In the past couple of weeks we were talking more about negative stuff regarding Tipperary in the Munster Championships and the club campaigns with Killadangan going down and, one or two other teams maybe not getting where they wanted to go. But it was a good weekend this past weekend. Clonmel won handsomely down in Cork. Obviously, great win for Drom in the final of the Munster Camogie. We'll talk about that later on. But I suppose the first thing to talk about is the Tipperary panel for 2023. Is there anything that caught your eye? Of course, the obvious one would be Jerome Cahill not being involved. So obviously, whatever discussions were had with Liam Cahill didn't come to fruition. But in terms of what is there, what's kind of stuck out to you?
Yeah, it's just a bit of surprise to see the panel drop there on Monday night. I suppose we know what is it, 8 days is the weekend after next collective training can start. So I would you say it doesn't contain an awful lot of surprises. There's no there's some, but there's nothing really earth-shattering on it, is it? It's sort of a lot of what we expected. Plus, what were the surprises? From the guys that were training, I'm a Lura man, but I'd never impose on Bonner Maher about what his thoughts of county. I was surprised to see Bonner's name there again. I thought maybe Liam Cahill would have maybe gone on without him, but obviously Liam has decided that Bonner still has an awful lot to offer. Look, in terms of leadership and setting the tone for the young guys, he's going to do it. And look, we saw with the club this year, he was in terrific form. It was intermediate grade, but look, he's still in great shape. He's a surprise. Surprised that Alan Flynn is gone now, to be honest. I thought for the last 4, 5, 6 seasons, very, very solid squad player within the playing group. Look, he didn't have a great campaign this year, but so an awful lot of guys I thought he was a surprise. Not surprised Jerome Cahill is not there. Look, we spoke about it a few weeks ago that the quotes he gave me after the county final more or less hinted strongly that inter-county hurling wasn't for him. So this was in terms of there's not an awful lot of the new faces that we didn't think were going to come in. The John Campions, the Podge Campions, the Sean Ryans, Gavin Ryan of Upper Church.
I go through it there, sure. Look, yeah. And to be fair, there's a huge spread of clubs throughout this. Yeah. There's 3 players from Lockmore. They're all brothers. There's, I think, 3 from Drom, and 2 of those are brothers. And after that, there's a fair old spread. So Cahill Barrett, no surprise there. Connor Bowe, Michael Breen, Ger Brown, Paddy Cadell, Seamus Callan, John and Porrick Campion, Kieran Connolly, Owen Connolly, Paddy Creed and Joe Fogarty, Jason Ford, Enda Heffernan, Barry Hogan, Seamus Kennedy, Mark Keogh, Bonner Maher, Rona Maher, Jake Morris, Conor McCarthy, Dan McCormack, Brian McGrath, John McGrath, Noel McGrath, Shane Neville. Now he's down as Cratlow, who obviously he plays for, but of course he's from Latin-Cullen originally. Gerard O'Connor, Keano Dwyer, Keano Kelly, Brian O'Mara, Niall O'Mara, James Quigley, Gavin Ryan, Jack Ryan, Johnny Ryan, Sean Ryan, Rhys Shelley, Connor Stakelum, and Alan Tynan. I suppose a couple of the ones that stand out to me there, and for people who wouldn't have seen them that often, the likes of Conor McCarthy. Now, he's been one of, I think, 12 guys who were on that Tipperary under-20 team in 2019 that won an All-Ireland against Cork with a fairly devastating display. I think it was something like 517 to 118, something like that. I think there's 12 players. There'd be 13 if Craig Morgan didn't do his cruciate. But can you tell us about the likes of Conor McCarthy and what you'd have seen of him?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say it's left the field, but I suppose he's one of those maybe not one of the big names you're probably looking out for, but in terms of a tough defender, I'm not surprised he's in there. He's definitely a Cahill sort of a player. I think we were probably thin on maybe inside backs last year, maybe on the squad. So he's definitely one that I would think what you're looking at. He's the 23 years of age. I think he had his injury problems in 2021, but he's back. He had a good campaign with Nina now last year or this season. So I'm delighted to see him in there. Look, I think the one guy on that list that you could say maybe outside of maybe say Shane Neville, who we always know he was within the system, but he playing in Clare, is that, Cahill's scoured the county is Cian O'Dwyer of Clonakilty. Now, I think Cian O'Dwyer has had a couple of brilliant seasons for Clonakilty.
What sort of player is he now, and what position do you see him?
Wing forward, can score. There's a bit of physicality about him as well. So look, he's, in fairness, looking at that squad, you can't say Liam Cahill hasn't maybe scoured the county in terms of what he's looking for in a player. Look, there'll always be some guys out there who think, he should be in there maybe. But look, he's picked an extended panel of 40. It's like, so look, there's probably, and you're probably, is there a chance Barry Heffernan could be back next year? I suppose if he gets a clean run at it, you're probably crucial. You're talking 9 months. He could be back in March or April, but it's probably going to be doing well. I suppose if Tip gets to an All-Ireland next year, he probably has a chance of being back. But you're probably looking at that core 40 is in terms of what he's looking at. Maybe I think Aaron Morgan is a little unlucky. But I just wonder, has that badly broken hand maybe set him back? Maybe he might come in afterwards. I'm surprised Willie Connors is not there. Okay, he had an injury interrupted season. Came back, was getting better as the championship wore on. I would have thought maybe a good pre-season with Tip, he'd get back to his best. But plus it's there's a lot of talking points. I don't know what you think from it.
Oh, definitely. Like I look at this and I think, right, so Noel McGrath has been named as captain. So I think that's guaranteed starter for the year. Because like in some ways you'd be thinking, are Cahill and Beavens and so on and Tony Brown, which was kind of known for a few weeks, but it's probably only hit the headlines more recently. But like you'd be thinking they're going to build a team that can run the ball through the lines, a little bit like what they quickly introduced in Waterford. And like some people will say, that's not Tipperary's type of game, can't really do that. But I don't necessarily buy into that.
I think Cahill and Beavens will get Tip to play the way that suits the players they have. Like you think about it, Cahill and Beavens didn't actually stray an awful lot from the Derek McGrath style. They tweaked it an awful lot, but they didn't throw that sharp pass and working the ball through the lines. They knew they were smart and said these boys are too far gone playing that hurling to rip it up and start again. I think if we go copying Limerick and Waterford, we're at Tinkall not, and I think Tip have to maybe go to play to our strengths and try and get around teams that way.
Yeah, but like the thing that I would have said that the Waterford team did under him and what his under 20 and under 21 and minor team did was that they turn and take on the man. So that's what I mean when I say go at teams, and that involves running it through the lines as well. That's not going to happen if you blast every ball up the field. And I'm looking at I was almost trying to put together a starting 15 based on what I'm seeing there. And I was thinking, right, Conor Bowe, if he's up in the forward line, he'll go at his man. Mark Keogh will, Jake Morris will, Andrew Ormond will probably take on his man. Cian O'Kelly and Paddy Creedon, they're battering rams in the forward line. So they're just some of the names.
Ryan goes for goal.
Yeah, so I was thinking that coming back to the point about Noel McGrath, he's obviously not really a straight line runner. He's one of these lads that you're thinking, and you have to always imagine yourself playing Limerick, and maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves thinking of Limerick, but you will have to play them at their best team in the country. Imagine him at centre forward, sort of, pulling the strings and having nothing but runners around him. So that's why I think it would work, because you still need someone who's going to force the centre back to think. Like Declan Hannon isn't going to want him scoring 6 from play, and if John Kiley decides, hey, we're not going to mark him no matter what, then brilliant. Tipperary have someone who can conduct the orchestra. If they go out and mark him, then great space in behind. So that's why I'd look at that. And what you mentioned, like even last year, the lack of maybe inside backs. And I think over the years, this is something that Tipperary probably haven't had an abundance of. They've probably always just had enough to get by. Good cornerbacks, but always just enough to get by. And I was trying to see who would be the cornerback. So Cahill Barrett, then maybe you'd have Ronan Maher fullback. And I was thinking maybe Seamus Kennedy, who's currently playing fullback for the Footballers, maybe he would go back there. And then the half-back line could be the likes of Brian O'Mara. You look at maybe Paddy Cahill. I was thinking that even with Jack Fagan going back from wing forward to wing back last year, will it actually suit Michael Breen to go wing back because he can drive forward and he's power? What?
Dan McCormack.
Dan McCormick, yeah. But just Michael Breen is so suited to bursting out through lads, and he's got serious pace. And if you're up against a Grode Hegarty, for example, can he keep it in physically? So there's a lot of talking points. And Brian O'Mara has turned into an absolute sow, and I mean that in the best possible way. So I think there's plenty of good about it.
Yeah, I know it's what would you say? I think it's not a squad that you think it sets the pulses racing, but I think it's a starting point, and it's a good solid starting point, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, it just depends on the style of hurling they play, and how much time do you have to bed things in together? Because once you hit the league, then it's just rat-a-tat games the whole way until right up to the championship. So
I would think they're going to. I would think Noel McGrath, Callanan, Bonner, Maher, David must maybe forward and Barrett. We said, lads, it's all about April for you getting right, lads. Maybe the league will be about betting in some of the younger guys and knowing the guys that maybe will make a difference. Like you got your guy in, Jack Ryan. I know you've been sweet on him. In the chat, I'd say when you saw him on the list, you were saying, Jesus, maybe he's listening to Shane Stapleton.
I doubt it somehow. But the other thing is, you mentioned that number of experienced players there who all still have loads to offer, in my opinion. Now, you mightn't start them all at the one time, but they all have something to offer. Yeah. They probably will still have to play a decent part in the league, because if the style is going to change a little bit, you want those players to be exposed to it. We have a question in here from Porter Bubbles. So, of course, we haven't seen too much of Bubbles in the last few seasons, and injury would be a big part of it. Do you feel now, like, he's obviously been like a star? When Tipperary have won All-Irelands or been in All-Ireland finals, he's been brilliant. I think he's averaged something like 5 points from play in his All-Ireland finals, which is fairly, serious going. Do you think now that this might be we mightn't see Bubbles again?
Fairly, I'd say probably. I wouldn't say it's certain, but I'd say there's a fair chance. I'm not surprised he wasn't on the squad. We know Cahill is a very, very tough taskmaster, and I was never convinced Bubbles was going to be a Liam Cahill type of player. Look, we all know how gifted the guy is, and look, he's missed at maybe at the range 30, 31, he's missed a full year of inter-county training, and there's a lot of catching up to be done, and I just wonder that maybe Bubbles hasn't got the hunger for it anymore. I don't know. We all know that Bubbles at his best is a class act, like so. But I did think once Liam Cahill got the job, I had a feeling that Bubbles wasn't going to be coming back. And not just the Killinall Ballingarry rivalry, which is pretty savage, like, but I just. The Cahill mindset, he looks for a certain type of a player, and I just was never convinced that Bubbles was a fit for the way he was going to play.
Yeah, and players like Kieran Connolly and Brian O'Mara, who weren't there last year, do you think that they can come in and make an impact straight away?
I think Brian O'Mara can, for definite. Kieran Connolly, I know, has injury issues with a hip problem, so I'm sure he had surgery or something in the autumn, but I'd say maybe he could be a bit behind the curve maybe in terms of the league. But I took Brian O'Mara was there in 2021, and he had those couple of broken arms. So look, he's 23, 24. Like he was a giant of the college circuit. So like I would think he's not inexperienced as you might think. Like so, I think he would slot in straight away. And like there's an awful lot of guys there who should be fresh. Like Callanan didn't have a long year this year. Bonner Maher, like they had good club campaigns, so you think that a lot of these guys off the club campaign are probably coming in at a decent level of fitness. Like it'll be all about maybe what the Liam Cahill and the S&C guys want to do to take him to the next level. And like if you look what he did with Watford, it's slightly different in that he made examples of Noel Connors and Maurice Shannon. There's nothing in the squad he has suggest that he's making an example of anyone. Like okay, say Willie Connors, Alan Flynn, Robert Byrne. They're probably the three you thought would probably stay on with the Cahills. Particularly Robert Byrne, because remember what Robert did in 2018 when that under-21 team that got hammered in the Munster final. Robert Byrne was one of the guys that came in for the semi-final and made a dramatic impact at centre-back. You thought he's definitely a Cahill type of a player, a real nuggety type of a half back, but he hasn't made the cut.
Yeah, and like if you look through the team there, I really don't see that many that play in the full back line naturally. So that's something that but then again, like it's not like you would think that Barry Nash, for example, is a tight marking cornerback. They play a different way. So it just remains to be seen how Tip play. A few comments in here. Should players like McGarry and Leamy be getting top end S&C now, like Limerick are doing with Young English, rather than waiting until they're in their 20s? I'd imagine they are getting plenty of that.
I do know that there was a lot of debate. I can't not think there wasn't a discussion between Dean Cahill and Brendan Cummins over that the likes of Peter McGarry and Jack Leamy. I know they were on the radar, and I think did we chat about it last week in terms of what do you do? Do you bring them into the senior panel but play very, very little hurling this year, or do you leave them with the under-20s but maybe have them on a S&C program that's getting them ready for next year, but they're going to get maybe a good under-20 championship? But maybe, look, the under-20 championship is April. There's nothing to say that maybe if they had a good under-20 championship that they couldn't come in, if you know what I mean.
In a way, I'd see that as an upshot, that Liam Cahill could look over and let's say one of those two players who's named there could be others, and they're absolutely playing out of their skin in competitive action against, really good Munster teams that you'd be like, wow, look, this guy is showing he's ready for the stage. Whereas if it's in training, I mean, you're learning a fair bit about them, but there's nothing like competitive action, really.
And in fairness, like Jack Leamy has missed a lot of the club championship with injury. So I would maybe if Jack is fully fit and was right and going in to have a good college season, maybe he'd have a chance. But I just think maybe the club campaign hurt him a small bit, and maybe one more good under-20 championship would serve him better. And I'm always I'm in the belief now that unless you're ready to maybe start at senior championship, you're better off staying at under 20, if you know what I mean. I'm of the believer that the gap between under 20 senior is so strong. Unless you are exceptional, you're probably better off staying with the under 20 group for as long as you can.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. River Power says the best thing about the squad is that the players that have been brought in are playing out of their skin for their clubs, from Fogarty to O'Dwyer. So Joe Fogarty is someone that you would have seen, I'm sure, close hand with Moneygall. I think he was carrying an injury in the last couple of games, but he's somebody that Cahill obviously had time for at underage as well, a fairly flying wing forward.
That's it, no, he was. It probably has. I don't think it was Joe Fogarty's best club campaign. He was quite enough in the semi-final. I don't think he might have scored 1 point for playing in the final. But look, the guy can play. Like he's
I think he was carrying an injury.
Yeah, like you can't. I always did think that Cahill would be picking his squad based on what he knew from an underage, rather than maybe going in terms of maybe club form. Maybe a couple of guys got in on club form. Like I think Sean Ryan had another good club campaign. I didn't think he got a proper crack at the whip with Colin Bonner last year. I think he was only in 6 or 7 weeks before he was culled, and like that's in winter hurling. Like so, Sean Ryan is as skillful as they come, and he's a top of the ground hurler.
Yeah, and do you see? I suppose I'm looking at the representatives from the county finalists. There's only one Killadangan player, James Quigley, and just 2 from Killarwan. Sorry, was there? Oh, sorry. There's also Barry Hogan, the goalkeeper, and then from Killarwan, Niall O'Mara, and who's the one other off the top of my head? I'm not seeing it there. I think there's only one other Killarwan lad as well. So I'll figure that out short. Keane Kelly. Yeah. So both of those guys fully merited, and Niall O'Mara back after a year away had a very good season. Do you think it's surprising that there's so few from the county finalists in there?
No, I'm not. I think the day of basing your county panels off club form is nearly a day to pass. In some ways, it can help, and in some ways, it can hinder. Like I would have said, start of the summer, Sean Hayes would have been on the panel. I think Sean Hayes' 2 very, very quiet county final performances probably did him an awful lot of damage, if you know what I mean. Like so, like that, they're decided games where that can tell an awful lot about a player and maybe what their ability will be going into a county panel. And on the pressure days, can you stand up and perform? And on those 2 days, Sean Hayes was pretty quiet.
And then I'm looking at, if you wanted to have an unbelievably physical, combative team, you probably have a lot of players who could do that. And I'm just scanning through, and maybe I'll miss 1 or 2 as I'm saying it, but like Barrett's very physical and gets stuck into lads. Connor Bowe, Michael Breen, the champions of
when he wants to be as well. Like,
yeah, Owen Connolly's a very big man.
Big year for Owen Connolly now. Like Owen Connolly for years was probably the big physical white hope, big nuggety defender. Like, I thought
when he was playing cornerback last year I remember in Thurles against Dublin on a tiny little lad, and
his own clubman was manager of the team, and he more or less was gone off the panel before the championship. Like that's.
Well, why would you play a lad 6'4" cornerback?
Yeah, but if you want to play for Tip, you play where you're given a jersey. Like, we always hear to seeing you play, you get a jersey. Like, so, you have to see you play in the goals if you're given it. Like, so.
I know, but there's horses for courses too. But just some of the other big physical lads, like Gerard O'Connor, he's a very big lad. Dan McCormick's obviously a physical player. Keane O'Kelly can be a battering ram. Brian O'Mara. So if Tipperary want to physically mix it next year, they can. And then, of course, you have the likes of Andrew Ormond and like even Alan Tynan. So he would have been involved before. I wonder, can he step up to the next level?
I think he can. I think the longer actually this. I think report said the Gallagher brothers. I think Joe is 34, 35. I think Joe's time is gone. I think, and Tyke 31. I think 30, 31. So I'm not sure whether Tyke would have. I'm not sure Tyke. I think he's probably maybe a bit light for intercounty. But what was the point you were making?
That Tipperary can mix it physically with all the players that I've mentioned there, but they do have some small.
I think sure Seamus Kennedy's there, Dan McCormack, they're physical guys, Bonner's physical, like, so I just think it's all about getting back and hurling with confidence again, and hurling with belief, and hurling with, I suppose, the thing that's always trying to tip at arrogance. Maybe instead of trying to play down our arrogance, maybe we should put that thing back around our necks and say, if you think you're okay, we'll be arrogant against you if you want to. We'll stand toe to toe with you again, like, so.
What do you make of Tony Brown being involved? I'd say, look, it's a pair of fresh eyes in. He's no allegiances to anyone, no harm.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think that was, we knew that from a couple of months ago. I think that he was coming in, like, so. Yeah, look, no, I have no issue with that. Look, we've had Kieran McGeaney in before. We have had Micheál Donoghue in before. And look, if you were to ask me who over the last 25 years is the one player I would have taken from Waterford in a heartbeat, is Tony Brown. And I look at, they've had Paul Flynn, they've had Ken McGrath, two of the greatest players of ever. I just think for his longevity and I just loved everything about Tony Brown, and I just think he's you cannot tell me that some of these young guys are 20 somethings that hopefully some of them will remember Tony Brown in his heyday, won't learn an awful lot from this guy, maybe in a one-to-one, or if Tony comes up and has a 5-minute conversation with you in Morris Park some night, that you won't pick something up from that guy.
Yeah. So to talk then about Rossgray this weekend, they're up against Inniscarra. Great win for Rossgray the last day out against Ballysaggart, put them to the sword very much. What do you know about Inniscarra outside of, I suppose, Sean O'Donoghue, who's going to be the Cork captain next year?
Yeah, I saw the footage of their county final win over
Castlemartyr.
Castlemartyr, the last minute goal, like, Jesus, epic stuff, like last puck of the game. It looked like, was it over the course of the two games, maybe Castlemartyr were probably the better team, but maybe it says an awful lot that it shows their mentality that they never know that they're beaten. And look, they've had a few weeks. It'd be interesting now. Like, it was a big deal for them to win that county championship. Will it be? Will that be enough for them, or will they have had a chance to refocus and come again for a Munster club? And look, we always know the Cork club teams are very, very good in this. But in fairness, what Rossgray have a game under their belt. They've been able to refocus. They had a great win over Ballysaggart. Was talking of Alan Tynan, and I think the longer Rossgray go in this championship, it'll be better for Alan in terms of Tipperary for next year. Like, he did miss a lot of this year with injury, so he's actually probably only coming into his best form at the moment. Like, so, like, from a Tipperary point of view, you're not only hoping Rossgray get to a Munster final, but that it gives Alan more games and more time to get up to full speed.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, Sean O'Donoghue already, and just looking at the match programme from that county final replay against Castlemartyr, he was centre forward. So that's something that is very much going to have to be planned for by Liam England, Eddie Brennan, and so on.
I guess the one thing about that match was that the Ballytark games, how ruthless Roscrea were in the second half. It just shows you that they're really going after this. They've scored in 4:21 in November is good going. Like you look at Danesfort are gone, Owler to Bala are gone. Like it's there for not only Roscrea but for any team who really wants to go after it. The Kerry senior champions are gone, Naas are gone up senior. Like it's there for anybody who really wants it. Like so. And like I know, look, some people like to downplay maybe this grade, but these are the memories a lot of clubs are going to make. Like Kildangan have had a great run the last couple of years, senior level, but you ask anybody in Kildangan, the 2005 All-Ireland Intermediate final win over Carrickshock, that still is probably up there with the 2020 senior final win, and just in terms of what it meant to that club.
Yeah, I don't think you could overestimate how much this would mean to the club. Okay, so we've got Geraldine Canaan on the line here now. Geraldine, how are things with you?
How you doing, Shane?
Not too bad. Look, brilliant for Drom the other day, getting over the line against Scarfagonlo in the final. And what could you just sum up the game for us and what it was like at the final whistle when Drom got over the line?
Yeah, well, I suppose for the Drom girls and the management and the supporters, there was huge relief. I suppose 12 months previous they had lost to Scariff, and that really hurt. And it was a heartbreaking defeat. So a lot of the motivation this year has been to get back and to try and win a Munster title. And I thought they started very well. I thought they settled early with a few early scores. A lot of players got on the ball, and they were showing well. But Scariff then I thought the match swung in their favour maybe the second half of the first half, and the sides went in 5 points each. And I suppose everyone was kind of wondering, what's it going to take to win this match, and would it take a wonder goal? Would a mistake decide it? Drom had the advantage of the wind of the second half, and it was from in the stand. It didn't seem like that strong a wind, but I think out on the pitch, like as always was a bit stronger. And look, I just thought they set the tone really from the get go. The throw in the second half, Niamh Tracy with an unbelievable score. Like she's doing that time and time again this year. Just took the ball and soloed nearly the length of the field and over the bar straight off the hurley. And then that was followed up by a quick point from Emer McGrath. And, Scariff responded again, got a few points of their own, leveled it again. But I thought the last 20 minutes, Drom dominated. They just seemed to find an extra gear. The subs obviously had a huge influence off the bench. And I just thought Scariff had no answers for Drom then. And, I think Drom outscored them 6 points to nothing for the last 20 minutes or something like that. And obviously, the story of the match, I suppose, is Keisha Dwyer coming off the bench. I think within the space of 10 minutes, she had 3 points on the board and had set up a point. And I suppose it was a dream substitute appearance for her. But in fairness to the management, the changes they made really worked. And, it was a brilliant result and a brilliant win.
Yeah, Pat Ryan was talking about that afterwards, the impact of Katie, and just like you said, the fact that she's a minor. Shane, a fair atonement for last year in that, late on there was a chance to equalise, didn't quite happen, and the title slipped away. So a great day in terms of atonement.
Yeah, it is, and I just think that the way they did it, like it just gives them, I think it'll give them so much relief going on. And you can only take one game at a time, but just everything about Drom this year has been so impressive. Like the county final behind came from one, went down to De La Salle. Okay, it was the first time Waterford champions in senior. There was probably a bit of pressure on going down to their ground, dug it out in extra time. Probably didn't play their best, but still found a way to win in extra time. Then last week, 8 points all, 10 minutes to go. You're thinking, who has the resolve? And it's Drom, and it's resolve also in fitness. Like you can, in those conditions, you had to be super fit, and not only having the subs to bring on, but having the fitness to hit those last 6 points must have been massive. And it has to give them so much belief going forward that not only can Drom maybe get to an All-Ireland final, but maybe go and win it.
And I suppose, Geraldine, Emer McGrath scoring 7 points, 4 of those from frees, scored a point from a penalty and a couple from play as well. Would have been tough for her last year missing that late free, so great for her to be on the right side here.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose we all probably just expect free takers to step up and score every time, but it's a huge skill on its own. And, you know, even when she was standing over the first one, like, I was thinking, God, what's going through her mind? Like, because I suddenly had flashbacks of last year. But, you know, Emer was ultimate professional there, slotted over frees from all angles, made the right decision with the penalty as well. That gave us a 6-point cushion. You know, and she got a lovely score from play as well, and was busy throughout, you know, on the field. But like, she puts huge time and effort into practicing her frees, like every free taker does. And I suppose sometimes we probably don't, you know, acknowledge that enough and appreciate enough that the huge skill it is. And I suppose it's easy to do it on your own in the field, nobody watching you. But, you know, there was a massive crowd in Mallow, huge noise, huge atmosphere, a huge prize on stake. And, you know, Emer, you know, was excellent on the frees again.
Yeah, and what was it like on the final whistle when Drom had it done?
Yeah, sure. Look, just massive relief. I suppose 6 points up at that stage, you were kind of saying surely have it won. But, you know, I was at the minor B final the day before where Holy Cross got 2 late goals to turn around a 5-point deficit to beat Boherland, you know. So I was just thinking anything can happen here. You know, it only takes a second to score a goal if they got one and they could win that puck out. So obviously when the final whistle went, you know, you were just so relieved and so happy. And Joe, it's kind of emotional as well, you know. You know how much they wanted it, how much everyone puts into it, and, you know, tough times going on in the background, different people's lives connected to the club. And, you know, it was just nice to have something to celebrate and something to enjoy, and just to have all the hard work pay off, you know.
Yeah, and we'll find out soon if it's going to be Lochgiel Shamrocks or Schlockneil. I suppose most people would be looking at Schlockneil. Now, I haven't seen too much of Lochgiel, but the fact that it's, you know, it's next month, they have a small bit of time to come down off the high before building up to that again. That's no harm, Geraldine.
Yeah, I don't think it's any harm really, because obviously the Scariff game came very quick after the De La Salle game. You know, they have I think they're not going back training maybe till Saturday, and, you know, they had a few days to really enjoy it and really savor it and really soak it all in. And I think what, you know, the few weeks is no harm. I think the management will probably travel up to watch that Ulster final, and they can start preparing and focus on that then, and you know, get, you know, a few niggly injuries and get everyone back. And there'll be huge competition for places. They'll probably try and source some challenge matches as well beforehand. And, you know, everyone's going to be gunning for a starting position to get the next day, you know.
Yeah, I suppose most people would feel it's going to be Schlockneil, Shane. They won 3 in a row from 17 to 19, and, you know, they were back in the final then in 2019-20 as well. So there's serious pedigree with that team.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. But I would think of the potential 3 semi-finalists, you're probably thinking maybe Schlockneil's best days might be behind them. If, you know, they're still going to be very good, but you're looking at in Galway, probably Sarsfield's. I don't know if they're still in the champion. You think they're probably going to still be very strong. They're still in their prime. The Leinster final, I think, is this weekend. You're probably fancying Oulart de Bala to probably beat St. Vincent's. So look, you're probably looking at maybe an Oulart Sarsfield semi-final, and they're probably number 1 and 2. So probably gives Drom and Inch and Schlockneil or Lochgiel a great chance of one of those 3 clubs getting to an All-Ireland club final. Look, for Drom, it's all about taking the next step from what last year when they lost to an All-Ireland semi against Sarsfields, and it was comprehensive enough. I think it was 13 points to 4 or something. So it just shows you that there is a bit of a gap to be bridged. But look, you need to get to All-Ireland finals to start bridging that, and like that will be the next step for Drom to take, and hopefully they'll do that.
You know, and what do you think, Geraldine? Even like if you brought it out to the Tipperary senior team, there was, you know, getting to semi-finals, and it never quite happened getting over the line in championship or league there for a few years, and then Tip took a bit of a backward step this past year with maybe some players being missing or whatever. Do you think Drom now are in a position where they can dare to dream here, where they can kick on and really make a mark for Tipperary Camogie?
Yeah, look, like as Shane says, if you look at the other teams, you know, say take Lochgiel aside, Schlockneil, Sarsfields and Oulart have all dominated in their counties, have all dominated in their provinces for a couple of years. So I think not until you kind of win a couple of county finals in a row and a few provincial titles can you really probably dream outside of that. And, you know, Drom are in that position now. They've contested the last 4 Munster titles, finals in a row, winning 2 of them. They definitely have a stronger panel. The management are all there together now for 4 years. They know what it's all about. And I suppose they're not satisfied enough with a Munster title now, which maybe they would have been in the past. So you can definitely dare to dream and dare to plan it. You know, definitely the girls will be disappointed if they don't go a step further now. And but obviously, look, you're up against, you know, you're in the top 4 clubs in the country now. It's going to be a huge, massive task. And they'll know the performance against Scariff won't be good enough to win the next day. And I suppose every day you go out, you just need more and more players, I suppose, have the games of their lives on the day. And, you probably can get through some matches in the county with maybe, 10 people playing well and a couple having off days. But you're really going to have, close to 15 players and your subs coming on, having a really, really good day the next day. But I definitely think they have that potential. We haven't seen the best of Drom yet. I've no doubt about it. They're getting there. There was girls, that maybe played better against De La Salle than they did against Scariff. There was girls that played better against Scariff than they did against De La Salle. And look, that's normal. But I suppose the key will be for the next few weeks, and the focus will be getting everyone in their prime and firing and getting the best out of everyone on the day. And look, and the lads will have their homework done. They'll go up and watch the Ulster final, and they'll have their matchups right, and what they need to do. And I do agree with Shane. I think Oulart and Sarsfields are on the stronger side of that, but it's going to be a massive test the next day as well.
Yeah, just to broaden it out to Tipperary Camogie, beyond that, Dennis Kelly's taken over for ahead of the new season. Where do you think Tipperary can go next year with Dennis in charge? And what will the playing personnel be like? Will there be any players back?
Look, I think it's. I mean, when I saw Dennis's management team announced there lately, I thought I was really, really positive because in fairness, I think Bill Mullally had taken the team as far as he could, and I think he'd acknowledge that as well. I think a fresh face was important, or a fresh voice is important, but I think it was also important to have some, a bit of continuity from other years. So look, Dennis has stepped up as the manager, and but he's brought in a lot of new fresh faces. Michael Ferncombe, obviously renowned coach at this stage, and did very good job with Clonmel this year. Linda Grogan has huge playing experience and was involved with Cahill this year, who are going really well. Just Oscar Dwyer, I've heard great things about him from a strength and conditioning point of view. So Kevin Moran as well from the Carter Burst. Again, it's all new energy, new voices coming in, which I think is important, because I think the players are there. We just need, maybe there's some younger players I think will come on. There was some very impressive players from the minor last year. I'd say Dennis will call some of them up. There was probably some players not available to him last year. I'm sure he'd be hoping that they're all available this year. There was girls carrying injuries and things like that as well. So, I think the players are there. I think they need to maybe find the best style for Tip going forward. But I just think things didn't go well for them last year, and I think it's just a matter of fresh start, fresh voices, and maybe some fresh players on the panel. But I don't think a whole lot needs to change. Like you could see, beating Cork in the last group game last year proves that they're good enough really to go on further. And I suppose the girls will know themselves what they need to do right this year and what didn't go well last year. And I think Dennis is a shrewd operator, and I think Tipperary are going to be thereabouts again this year.
Yeah, Shane, anything you want to ask Geraldine?
Yeah, just in terms of the semi-final, I think it's the weekend of the 10th of December. I assume maybe if there is a final, it won't be till after Christmas, I assume, is it?
No, it's actually the 17th.
Oh, right, so just a quick turnaround.
So the semi-final is the 10th, and the final is fixed for the 17th in Croke Park. So a huge prize, obviously, on offer there, and it'd be some Christmas if you could.
Yeah, geez, I
could win that one.
In some ways, it's great for whoever wins it. Hopefully, it'll be Drom that it's done and dusted before Christmas. But God, it's a quick turnaround semi-final to a final. Like there's not much prep time. It's if you got an injury, God forbid, in the semi-final, you're probably But look, please God,
yeah, I suppose
if he's got it's a problem. Drom will have to have something that they look forward to it being a problem if they get to the final.
Yeah, I suppose the decision was made to have it all finished this side of Christmas, which I think is better for the Camogie and the players and everything. But I suppose the 4-week gap and then have to turn around a week does seem to be strange. I'm not sure the logic of that, but especially if Leinster and Ulster nearly sorted as well. So I think 2 weeks would have been a nicer gap, but that's the dates anyway, and that's what Drom are eyeing up now.
Yeah, definitely should be played off like the semi-final a little bit quicker. I'd agree with you there, Geraldine. Look, thank you very much for joining us. It was brilliant to get your thoughts and insights on everything to do with Drom and Tipperary Camogie.
Thanks, lads.
Geraldine.
Okay, so we'll talk now about Clonmel getting a brilliant win over Nemo the other day. It was pretty comprehensive, wasn't it? 215 to 111, and even at that, Nemo's goal came in garbage time right at the end, so it really just took the bad look off it, didn't it?
Yeah, Jesus. What was it, last Saturday night? Didn't seem to was much on the telly, so and it's not often you get a Tipperary team playing football on RTE, but sit down to watch it, and geez, you knew after 5 minutes, okay, we knew it was going to be a good game. Commercials had the potential to win, but you know, after 5 minutes, Clonmel were on it, and I was sort of saying recently enough that that's 13-minute spell effectively when they won the county final. If they could play like that for longer, gee, they could beat an awful lot of teams, and like they were terrific. Like, and not just them. Like, maybe the weather helped, but like, when you look at how good Mike Cullen were last weekend, how good that Glen and Errigal Kieran match was on the Sunday. Like, geez, there's some really good teams out there, but they're playing really good football, and you just hope that we see a lot more of that going into the rest of the campaign. But coming back to Clonmel, like, just when you look at their team from 1 to 15 and some of the subs they were bringing on, like they're a serious team. Like, and like Seamus Kennedy, Mark and Luke Connolly, Kevin Fahey solid at centre back. I thought Corey Luren wing back was super. Jason Lonergan unreal centre forward, and you just hope maybe there's probably going to be maybe a bit of money spent, maybe trying to get him home and back, maybe for some of these games coming up. Like Sean O'Connor, excellent. Conal Kennedy back to his best, and you think they won that game last weekend with maybe Jack Kennedy being quiet, Michael Quinnivan. I thought Quinnivan. In fairness to Quinnivan, when there was times when Clonmel needed him to get on the ball, and in fairness he got it and he carried the ball, and like he's we always know he's an inside forward, but God, his power carries are ridiculous, aren't they? They just, you can't stop him really. He's just so hard. He will break a tackle or he'll carry the ball 60 yards in about 6 seconds, and you'll be able to get a shot away before opposition defenders can get their defence set.
Yeah, and if Lonergan isn't back for, let's say, either the final or the semi-final, Tipperary, Clonmel obviously would have to beat Newcastle West to get there. Yeah. But you could easily see Quinlivan going into centre forward. And I know he obviously made his name as an inside forward, but Sean O'Connor's going well in there. Coleman Kennedy's doing fine in there as well. So, it'd probably cause the least amount of disruption then if you can just bring in someone into midfield. Or maybe, who knows, maybe the likes of Peter McGarry will find his way into the game. Funny enough that we mentioned him earlier on.
Cannon came off the bench. Aldo Matassa came off the bench. Like, they have guys off the bench that are good enough to start. Like, and like one guy I've been very, very impressed with this year is James Morris, the cornerback, and he's probably not playing cornerback. He's too big for cornerback, but he looks like a guy that can actually play anywhere. And they've more or less decided this guy is playing too well to be sitting on the subs bench, even though he's 19 years of age. He's in the team on merit, and like I think he's a guy David Power is going to be bringing in very, very quickly, because he just looks to have the physical, everything you want in a senior intercounty footballer. That once he develops fully, he's going to be a serious player.
Yeah, and Jason Lonergan, so it'd be one thing if he was based in New York and you're talking about a 6-hour flight, but he's based over at the far side in San Jose, so it's going to be an even longer trek again, which brings that bit of jet lag into play. And you just don't know if would it upset things a little bit, but like, he's such a super player.
It's a risky one. Like, what do you do? It's if they decide, look, they will not take Newcastle West for granted at all. You think Commercials were in a great position last week as underdogs against Gnemo. Now they're going from the hunters to the hunted, and Newcastle West will be licking their lips thinking, look, who are these big upstarts in Tipperary? Like, we can go down to Clonmel and maybe beat them. And I was actually thinking, while it'd be interesting to see what Clonmel do with that game. Their own grounds in the sports field is an inter-county ground. They can have that match there if they want. But I can't think that Clonmel wouldn't think, let's bring them up to Semple Stadium, big field, hard surface. Let's run the legs off these guys. Because I know the pitch in Clonmel can be soft, and we know, look, the weather this time of year. I don't think Clonmel sports field, even though it's their own home pitch, I'm not sure Semple Stadium wouldn't be more conducive to Clonmel having a better chance of winning that Munster semi-final.
Yeah, like they're built for Semple Stadium, and dare I say it, they're built for Croke Park as well, assuming that they'd get that far. But yeah, it's hard to imagine that they won't give a big performance against Newcastle West. Hopefully it'll be enough. And if they get through that, geez, you really can dare to dream, because you're looking at Cairns O'Reilly's or Aero Guinness. I don't think anyone going into a final would have any sort of an inferiority complex. So fingers crossed that they can go ahead and continue their season.
Mad that I was remembering the Thurles that in provincial football, all our 3 football teams are still standing. We've only 1 team left in the hurling, like so.
Yeah, and I suppose Thurles are the other team there. They got a great win the other day against Liscannor of Clare, 1-9 to 7 points. Jack Fogarty with that late goal that clinched it, and you could see he was fairly buzzing with the way he celebrated. And he was letting Liscannor boys know, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Geez, the way Paddy Creedon was knocking over some of them points. Geez, I'd say David Power would only wish that he could call him up to the senior football panel.
Oh, look, if he wasn't in with the hurlers, I think he was in the footballers 2 years ago. I think that they had him tagged from a long way out in terms of if they brought him in young enough, they were thinking of we could bring him in young enough and get him settled. He might be with us for 10 years, but look, he's obviously he aims to make it with the hurlers, but he is, and through his father Peter, look, he is proud of his football heritage, and look, they'll fancy their chances of getting to a Munster final. Like they have a home game against Kilmurray in the semi-final. Kilmurray won the Cork Championship recently. Enough, you think Cork club football, they probably will be a bit ahead of Liscannor, but Thurles probably feel, look, we could do it here. I think isn't it just a pity with a home semi-final that it's not Fossa that we're playing? Could you imagine how big the crowd would be at Semple Stadium if Thurles Arsenal were playing Fossa? Or no, it's a Fossa, Fossa, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Cliffords, like, and Jesus, like I don't know, it's rare enough that you're living through greatness, but Jesus, like he is what Christy Ring. I think we're living through greatness with Trevor Clifford. I think. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, he's unbelievable to watch.
Like what people thought of when they were looking at Jimmy Doyle and Christy Ring and Mick Mackey play. I'd say I don't know if maybe those people in those eras appreciated then what they had. Maybe they did, but I always feel, how do you judge these things? But I sort of get that vibe off David Clifford. But
like Fossa is a tiny little place, and you've got thousands of people showing up to see these junior matches. You know, in the back end of Kerry, and there he is, and just getting mobbed after these games. No, definitely. Like,
but isn't it brilliant for the club championship that it's not just that he doesn't have to play with a big club to be recognised in the club championship, and I suppose that's probably the great thing about the provincial club, intermediate and junior, that the Fossas can make their name. Like, you probably think at this stage that there's probably a fair chance Fossa will win the All-Ireland Junior Club Football Championship. They're probably favourites.
And they've got Eamon Fitzmaurice, an All-Ireland winning manager from 8 years ago, as their manager.
But you can't think him winning, if it happens, in All-Ireland Junior Club Football will mean as much to him. And that might be the height of it. I'm not sure whether Fossa can maybe win a Kerry Intermediate Championship or maybe a Kerry Senior Championship in the next few years. Maybe they can, but you can't tell me that if an All-Ireland Junior or a Kerry Junior is as big as he does with Fossa, that won't mean as much as what he did with Kerry this year with an All-Ireland. Yeah, in terms of what you do with your club, like, so.
Yeah, and in the next round of the Munster Junior Football, they'll be up against Castlemahon of Limerick, who have Seamus Flanagan, obviously the devastating Limerick forward.
Did you see his goal last week?
Oh, glorious. He knocked over a 45 from the ground as well, so he obviously has a fair bit of football pedigree to him as well. So I suppose the final item you wanted to talk about was the change in the structure of the club football, a reduction from 16 to 12 teams by 2025.
Yeah, the structures meeting was on last night in Thurles, I suppose, where the Formula 8, I suppose they decide in terms of structures for next year. And I suppose outside of the football one, it was probably the least, I wasn't at the meeting, but it was one of the least divisive meetings, you would say. It maybe shows that we've an awful lot of what's going on in the county is working well. There isn't an awful lot of changes needed. But I suppose in terms of football, I think this was pretty much it was I suppose it's been 12 months in the making. I suppose the only interesting thing was whether, in some ways, would turkeys vote for Christmas, i.e., cutting 16 down to 12, cutting, like, in terms of maybe some of the traditional football clubs who are maybe teetering on their senior status, how would they feel about maybe over the next couple of years maybe having to go back intermediate, or maybe some intermediate clubs going down to junior? But in fairness, it's a decisive vote in terms of restructuring, and I think it's good for the championship. As I think primarily for the intermediate championship it'll be very good, because there's an evenness there. I think the top end of senior, you're still going to get Commercials, Brackens, Lockmore, Mile Rovers, but I'd say the group stages would be more dog eat dog, because you could nearly still pick 6 or 7 of the quarter finalists at the start of the group stages every year. But maybe by 2025, when you have 3 groups of 4, instead of maybe having Mile Rovers, Commercials, Lockmore, you could say Upper Church maybe is your top seeds. You know the four are going to win the group. Now you're going to potentially have a group of Lockmore and Commercials maybe in one group, if you know, and there's a great group stage game to get your teeth into, like, so. And I just think it'll make it harder to win, which is what we need. Maybe it might cut out some of the walkovers we saw this year too. You probably give our intermediate champions would have more chance maybe in Munster, because you're putting the 13 team out instead of the 17 team out. So I think long term, and the same with junior, I think you're going from the 33rd back to the 25th. So should maybe make us a little more competitive in terms of those competitions as well.
Yeah, and an individual level, when clubs can actually aspire to win in a Club All-Ireland, irrespective of the level, I think it's a brilliant thing, and it does kind of knit the club and the panel together that bit more. And obviously they're training together for longer too. Okay, I think that's it for the show today, is it? We've it all said.
Busy old show, like, so the show hopefully Ross Gray will do the business next week, and maybe there could be a football squad coming soon, so we don't know yet.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's it for the show today. Don't forget to pick up a copy of the Nina Guardian. We'll chat to you again soon, Shane.